This right here is the Sony PlayStation 3. Time to review it. After the massively successful PlayStation 2, people were very excited to see what Sony would do next. And boy, did they have something special in store. They went all out on the PlayStation 3, making sure that it was the most powerful and most feature-filled console that money could buy. Sporting true high-definition graphical capabilities, the ability to play HD movies thanks to the brand new Blu-Ray disc format, built-in motion controls in the controller, full PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 2 backwards compatibility, a built-in hard drive, the ability to save your pictures, movies, and music straight onto the system, an improved online infrastructure, and a CPU that rivaled even the best computers at the time. The PS3 was a beast. People were very impressed with what Sony was showing off. Except for that launch price. The original PlayStation 3 at launch had two models. The 20GB version launched for $499, while the 60GB version launched for $599. In 2006, mind you. Now, of course, it's not uncommon nowadays to see consoles launching for those kinds of prices. But this is 2006 we're talking about. That was a lot of money back then, especially for a console. And the PS3's problems definitely did not stop there. Because of its unique architecture, it made developing games for it way more complicated compared to its competitors. I'm not going to go into great detail about the PS3 cell processor, but basically, it's a CPU developed by IBM, and it is a very capable chip. Think of it as like an 8-core processor, but also not really. It was essentially a single-core processor with 7 tiny little processors inside of it. It's a very complex CPU, but also very, very powerful. The US Air Force actually connected up 1,760 PlayStation 3s together and essentially made a supercomputer out of them. I'm not joking. Look it up. It's real. Surprisingly, that PlayStation 3 cluster was one of the fastest supercomputers in the world at the time. That is insane. So you get the idea. The cell processor was very capable, as long as you knew how to use it. Unfortunately, during the early years of the PS3, a lot of developers were having huge problems getting the hang of the architecture. So because of that, most early titles looked and played worse compared to its competitors, even though the PS3 was more powerful. So a combination of a high price tag and a complex architecture really hurt the PS3 in sales. At least initially. Because, I swear to God, this sounds something out of a Hollywood movie, I swear. Somehow, someway, Sony was able to take the PS3 and do a complete 180. Around 2009, Sony made huge decisions that really benefited the PS3 in the long run. First, they slashed the price to $299. They released the PS3 Slim model, which is what you see in front of you right now. They gutted out some features to cut costs, and developers were finally starting to get used to the PS3's unique architecture, creating games that really took advantage of the hardware. It may not have recreated PS2 sales numbers like Sony was hoping, but with thousands of must-play games, fantastic multimedia support, and free online play, the PS3 is a fantastic system, and one that still holds up really well today. There's a good reason why it sold over 87.4 million units worldwide. It is a great system. I unfortunately did not get to experience the PS3 during its heyday. I didn't pick up one of my own until 2016. I was heading off to college at the time, and I was looking for a Blu-ray player as well as another game system. And I looked at the PS3 and I'm like, well, it's fairly cheap nowadays, and it just so happens to play Blu-rays, so might as well kill two birds with one stone. I played the heck out of my PS3 in college. So many great games. It was my most used system at the time. It was also a fantastic Blu-ray player. And even though I upgraded to a PS4 a couple years ago, I still come back to my PS3 a lot. It is one of my favorite systems ever. I love this thing. While yes, it does suck that this model does not play PS2 games, I am glad I went with the PS3 Slim version because I do think it looks a little better compared to the original model, plus it is way more reliable. And there was no way in hell that I was going to go with a PS3 Super Slim. That thing is just... it's just so cheap and just does not look as good. So on the top of the PS3 we have the PS3 logo all embossed right in the plastic. Really nice touch. It's one of my favorite parts about the PS3 Slim. The original model of the PS3 had a shiny piano black finish, which was quite the scratch and fingerprint magnet. But the PS3 Slim has a matte finish, which I personally prefer. The original model also had PlayStation 3 spelled out across the console going this way, which was a really nice touch. On the front of the system we have the Sony logo, the slot loading Blu-ray drive, which on the PS3 Super Slim, this is actually a top loading drive. So basically there was a sliding door where you'd put the discs in, and it just felt really cheap, and I don't personally like that. We also have the PlayStation logo right there, which on the original model, just like on the PS2, you could actually spin the logo depending on what the orientation of your console was, whether it be like this or upright like that. We also have the disc eject button and the power button. On some models of the PS3 Slim, these two buttons will actually illuminate when the system is on. My PS3 does not have that though. We also have two USB 2.0 ports. It does kind of suck that we only have two of them. I know on certain fat models, I think the original ones actually had 4 USB ports instead of 2. Kind of sucks that they had to take those away, but hey, at least on the PS5 they give us more than 2 ports. Thank you, Sony. Thank you for listening to us. Right next to the USB ports we have a hard drive indicator light, and over here is where the hard drive goes. Luckily, unlike the Xbox 360, you can use any laptop grade hard drive in the PS3 from any manufacturer as long as it has a SATA connection. All you have to do is install the hard drive, then install the firmware using a USB key, and you're ready to go. Right where the hard drive is, you'll also see logos indicating the PS3's various multimedia capabilities, like Blu-ray disc, DVD, compact disc, Dolby True HD, Dolby Digital Plus, DTS HD, Bluetooth, and HDMI. On the right side of the system, there's nothing, and on the left side, same thing. On the bottom of the system, we have another PS3 logo, some air intake vents all across the console. We will also find a plastic tab that hides the hard drive screw. We also have a label here indicating various information about the PS3, like a model number, manufacture date, FCC, etc. Which my specific PS3 is model CECH-3001A, and the manufacture date is March 2012. On the back of the PS3 we have a barcode indicating the serial information about the PS3. We have the vent for the fan, which unlike the original model of the PS3 Slim is way quieter. It is audible, but at least it doesn't scream like a jet engine. I'm looking at you, PS4. So in terms of ports, the PS3 has Ethernet, HDMI, digital optical out, AV multi-out, and AC. I think I mentioned this in my PS2 review, but you can actually use the same AV cables from the PS2 and even the PS1 on PS3. That's awesome. Also, the original model of the PS3 had a different style AC plug and actually also had a power switch on the back, just like the fat PS2. We have to talk about the DualShock 3 controller because oh boy does it have quite a history. So the original prototype controller looked drastically different compared to the final version. Here's a photo. Wow, that is quite an odd design if I've ever seen one. Yeah, people were kind of confused when they first saw that controller. They coined it the banana controller for obvious reasons because it was shaped like a banana. Yeah, that thing looks so uncomfortable. I am really glad they stuck with this design. It's so much better. So compared to the PS2 controller, they didn't really change much for PS3. They made the analog sticks slightly smaller as well as slightly looser compared to the PS2. They added a PlayStation button to access the main menu as well as turn on the system. They added Bluetooth, so the controller is wireless, and they added 6-axis for motion controls. Fun fact, when the PS3 first launched, the controller did not have rumble. That's right, a controller from 2006 did not have a rumble feature. Crazy, right? That's blasphemy. Well, Sony's excuse was adding rumble into the controller would interfere with the 6-axis feature. That turned out to be false and complete BS. And later on, I think around 2008, I want to say, they added rumble back into the controllers. Some people criticize the PS3 controller for keeping the same design that they've had since 1994, but honestly, it doesn't really bother me all that much. I like the PS3 controller. It's not my favorite. They improved a lot with the PS4 controller, but it's still a good controller. The only thing I don't like about it is the battery life is okay. It's not terrible, but the Xbox 360 controller has way better battery life. And also, the triggers on the PS3 are... they're not great. They are not great. They feel really stiff and mushy, and they improved these a lot on the PS4 controller. So, what exactly is powering the most powerful console of the 7th generation? Well, for starters, it has a 3.2 GHz IBM Cell Broadband Engine CPU with 1 PPE and 8 SPEs. For memory, the PS3 has 256 megabytes of XDR DRAM and 256 megabytes of GDDR3 video RAM. For storage, the PS3 has a 2.5-inch laptop-style SATA hard drive and supports up to 1 terabyte drives. The PS3 supports 480i, 480p, 720p, 1080i, and 1080p. For video outputs, the PS3 supports composite video, S-video, RGB SCART, component video, D-terminal, and HDMI. For a graphics chip, it uses a custom NVIDIA RSX reality synthesizer chip clocked at 550 MHz. For audio output, the PS3 supports AV multi-out, Toslink, and HDMI. For audio formats, the PS3 supports analog stereo, LPCM, Dolby Digital 5.1, DTS 5.1, DTS HD Master Audio, Dolby True HD, Dolby Digital Plus, and AAC. For connectivity, it supports 802.11bg Wi-Fi, Bluetooth 2.0, and Gigabit Ethernet. The PS3 supports Blu-ray, DVD, compact disc, PlayStation, PlayStation 2, Super Audio CD, Video CD, and digital distribution. PlayStation 2 and Super Audio CD formats are only supported on fat models of the PS3, and Video CD formats are only supported on the Slim and Super Slim models. And finally, the PS3 Slim measures in at 11.42 by 2.56 by 11.42 inches and weighs 7.1 pounds. Alright, let's plug this thing in and show it off. Everything's all plugged in and ready to go. So, to turn on the system, you can either use the power button on the system itself or the PlayStation button on the controller. Here we go. And you hear a beep when you turn on the system. Oh, I love that startup. Just so fancy. So here's the main menu of the PS3, which Sony calls the cross-media bar. It wasn't just the PS3 that they used this interface for. They used it for everything from their Blu-ray players to their smart TVs and many other devices. It's actually a pretty clean looking menu. Very fast, very snappy, everything's just all laid out for you, just easy to find. I quite like this menu. Sony must have really liked the cross-media bar, because some elements of this menu can still be found on PS4 and even PS5. So when you first boot up the PS3, you'll be taken straight to the PlayStation Network section of the main menu. This right here is the What's New section, where it'll advertise new games that are coming out, as well as shortcuts to various sections of the PlayStation Store, like a game catalog, add-ons, and apps. This section will also show recently used software, as well as give you an option to boot straight to the software from this page. As you can see, recently I've been playing some Destiny, some Ratchet & Clank Tools of Destruction, and watching some YouTube. Account management is where we can obviously manage our PlayStation account. From here you can edit your account information, you can redeem download codes, you can see your transaction history, you can either activate or deactivate your account from the PS3 or even on a PSP system. You can browse Facebook from the PS3, which is awesome. Unfortunately, they removed this feature years ago, so you can no longer do this. And finally, you can edit privacy settings. Trophy collection is where you can view your trophies, which is basically PlayStation's version of achievements. Every trophy that you have ever earned on your account from your PS3 or your PS4 will show up on this screen. One nice feature is you can actually compare your trophies with other people in your friends list. PlayStation Plus is obviously where you can manage your PlayStation Plus membership. Yes, PlayStation Plus actually originally started on the PS3. I want to say they added this around 2010 or 2011. It's essentially a membership that gives you different perks compared to a regular PlayStation Network account, like discounts on games, free games that are offered every month, and even the ability to upload your save data to the cloud, which is awesome. And finally, PlayStation Store, which is obviously where you can buy new games and applications, download demos, buy DLC, purchase HD movies, and etc. Sony was originally planning on shutting down the PlayStation Store on PS3, PSP, and PS Vita this summer. But luckily, Sony has since reversed their decision. So luckily, the PlayStation Store on PS3 and PS Vita will remain open. The store for PSP will unfortunately shut down, I want to say this June. But I believe you'll still be able to purchase PSP content on PS3 and PS Vita and then download it to your PSP that way. Moving on over to the right, we have the Friends section where you can view various things such as blocked players, you can add a new friend, you can see what players that you've met on various games, you can start a new chat, you can see your message box, and you can view the friends that you've added. Moving over to the network section, we can do things such as view online instruction manuals. We can set up remote play with either a PS Vita or a PSP system. We can browse the web with the built-in internet browser, and we can search the web using various different search engines. Next, we have the game section, probably the most important section of the cross-media bar. Here we can manage PS Vita save data. We can also manage data for PS3 content. We can manage data for PS1 and PS2 content, if your PS3 supports PS2 content, that is. We can manage PSP save data. We have another shortcut to the PlayStation Store. And we have all the games that we have installed on our PS3. TV/video services is where we can jump into various different streaming services like Netflix, Amazon Prime Video, YouTube, Hulu, Tubi TV, Twitch, and many other apps. The video section is where we can manage Blu-ray movie data. We can set up a media server, which is a really cool feature. You can actually do basic video editing and upload it to a video sharing website. I actually showed off this feature in one of my recent videos. Go check it out, it's pretty interesting. We have another shortcut to the PlayStation Store, and then at the bottom you'll find all the video content that you've either put on the PS3's hard drive or downloaded from the PlayStation Store. On the music section, we can set up a media server. We have our music streaming services like TuneIn Radio and Spotify. We can set up playlists for music that we have stored on the PS3's hard drive. And then we have all the music that we have stored on the PS3. The photo section is where we can set up a media server. We can do a little animated photo gallery of all the photos that you have stored on the PS3. We can set up a photo playlist, and we have all the photos that we have stored on the system. Settings is where we can obviously change settings for the PS3. We can do various operations like update the system. We can adjust settings for games. We can adjust settings for video. We can adjust settings for music, for chat, just basic system settings, theme settings, date and time, power saving, accessories, printer settings, which is actually really cool and something that I would love to try out, but I do not have any printers that are compatible with PS3. But that would be a really cool feature to try out. Display settings, sound settings, security settings, remote play settings, and network settings. And finally, we have the users section where we can edit users on the PS3, we can create new users, or we can shut off the system straight from this menu. And you can actually, if you have content that's downloading, you can actually set the PS3 to automatically turn off after the content is done downloading, which is really cool. So let's start with my physical games. And I have a pretty sizable collection. Combined with my digital games, the PS3 is my biggest collection. And that's thanks to PS3 games still being pretty common and really cheap nowadays. So starting things off, we have Ratchet & Clank Future Tools of Destruction. This was a pretty early title in the PS3's lifespan, and is the first game in the Ratchet & Clank Future series. I just started playing this game, but from what I played so far, it's good. I do think the original Ratchet & Clank trilogy on PS2 was a little better, but this is only the first game, and my opinion might change when I play the later titles. It can be a little buggy at times, but it's still a good game, and I do recommend it. Best of PlayStation Network Volume 1. This includes 4 games that were originally exclusive to the PlayStation Store, which are When Vikings Attack, Sound Shapes, Tokyo Jungle, and Fat Princess. There's a good reason why they call this Best of PlayStation Network. These are really fun games. Highly recommend it. Infamous. By far my favorite PlayStation 3 game of all time. And, in fact, one of my favorite games ever. This game is so much fun. You take the role of a basic bike messenger, where a bomb goes off in the city, and you wake up with superpowers. And you basically have 2 choices. You can either use your powers to save the city, or use your powers to basically play God and destroy everything. It's not perfect, though. The graphics have not aged all that well. The voice acting is iffy. The karma system is pretty basic. The frame rate can be all over the place. It's a little buggy at times, but I still really enjoy this game. It is a must-have for any PS3 owner, and they improved a lot in the sequel. And speaking of that, here it is. Infamous 2 is a huge upgrade over the original game. Way better graphics, way better gameplay, way better voice acting, new powers to use, new city to explore, and they even allow you to create your own levels and share them online. That is awesome. Little Big Planet and Little Big Planet 2. These are the best co-op platformers that the PS3 has to offer. It's got super fun gameplay. It is so much fun to play with friends, and even more fun to create your own levels and share them online. It's just great. It is a must-own for any PS3 owner. Sonic's Ultimate Genesis Collection. This is a fantastic compilation game with some of the best Sega Genesis games. Sonic the Hedgehog, Altered Beast, Streets of Rage, Golden Axe, and many more, all playing in high definition. It's so good. It also has some pretty good bonus content, such as interviews with actual developers who made these games, and even a couple Sega Master System games and a couple of Sega arcade games. It is quite feature-packed and a must-own. MotorStorm. One of the best exclusive racing games on the PS3. This game is so much fun. Great graphics and gameplay that still hold up, a great soundtrack, and even online play for a while. They unfortunately shut down the servers for this game, and I think several other MotorStorm games as well. But even in offline single player, it's still a blast. Pure. This is actually a really fun ATV racing game. It reminds me a lot of the MX vs. ATV series by THQ, if you've ever played those. Does it do anything overly special? No, not really. But it's still a really good game. Graphics are great, gameplay is great, it's got a really good soundtrack. Give this one a try. Battlefield 4. This is a great entry in the Battlefield series, and probably one of the best ones in my opinion. It's got a pretty decent single player campaign, it looks and runs pretty good on PS3, and it's got phenomenal online multiplayer. This game is so much fun online. The multiplayer servers on PS3 are still up, but that might not be the case several years down the road. So I do recommend picking up the PS4 version because it does play a little better on there, and plus, if you want to continue playing online, that's the way to go. But still, Battlefield 4 on PS3 is still a pretty good version. The Sly Cooper trilogy were some of the best games on PS2, and the Sly HD collection is really, really good. This collection is what a remaster should be. The same games, same gameplay, all intact, remastered in glorious high definition. Plus, this collection has PlayStation Move compatibility and even stereoscopic 3D support. That is awesome. This is by far the best way to experience the original Sly trilogy. The Uncharted series are some of the best action games on PS3, and hell, even some of the best action games, period. Amazing cinematic storytelling, great graphics, great gameplay, fantastic voice acting. What else can I say? These games are amazing. I only own the first 2 games on PS3. They did make a third one, and the reason why I don't own that one is because I already own the remasters on PS4. So they still play really good on PS3, but if you have a PS4, play it on there. They play really, really good. And finally, to round off my physical games, we have Battlefield 3. Just like Battlefield 4, Battlefield 3 is one of the best games in the series. This was a very graphically impressive game when it first released in 2011, and still is to this day. Just like Battlefield 4, it's got a great single-player campaign, great graphics, and amazing online multiplayer that is still up as of 2021. Whether you play it on PS3, Xbox 360, or PC, you're going to have a fun time. Next, let's take a look at my digital games. Starting off with PS3 content, we have Destiny. This was a huge release in 2014. Bungie is best known for their amazing Halo games on Xbox, but when they came out and revealed Destiny was a multi-plat MMO first-person shooter, people were excited, very excited. Unfortunately, when Destiny first launched, it did not have a whole lot of content, and the story was pretty mediocre at best. Needless to say, it did not live up to expectations. However, after getting 2 major DLC expansions with The Taken King and Rise of Iron, which added way more content, Destiny got way better than it was at launch. The best way to experience Destiny is on PS4 and Xbox One, as the Rise of Iron DLC only came out on those platforms. Xbox 360 and PS3 never got that expansion. But even on PS3, Destiny is still a lot of fun, and quite a few people are still playing it to this day in 2021, which is honestly baffling. I mean, part of the reason why people are still playing it, my guess is PS3 is one of the last systems that are still supported that has free online play right next to the Wii U and 3DS, so that might be why. I can't speak on whether the Xbox 360 version is just as alive and well. I've never played it on Xbox 360, so I don't know how it's doing on that platform. Do keep in mind, though, that the PS3 is a pretty old system, and I'm sure the Destiny servers are probably not going to be up forever on PS3, so just be aware of that. Resogun. I believe this was originally a launch title on the PlayStation Store on PS4, but it actually got a port to PS3, I want to say the same day. And guess what? It's just as good and just as fun on PS3. It does run at a slightly lower FPS, but honestly, it's still playable, and it's a good version. Q*bert Rebooted. It's an okay remake of Q*bert. It doesn't do anything overly special. It's just the same original game, just with updated graphics. Although, as a bonus, they actually included the original arcade version of Q*bert, which is, to be honest, the only reason why I still have this game. Not gonna lie. Tower of Guns. This is actually a pretty fun randomly generated FPS. It is on PS4, and it does run at a buttery smooth 60 FPS on there. The PS3 version, yeah, it runs at 30, but it feels a little on the sluggish side. But, you know, it's still a pretty good version, even though the PS4 version is a lot better. iCreate. I'm not entirely sure what this application does. I assume it works with the PlayStation Eye accessory. I only downloaded it because this was like before Sony said that they were reversing their decision on shutting down the PlayStation Store. Same goes with the Pulse Elite Manager. I downloaded these 2 applications because, you know, I went into full panic mode and just wanted to download them before they shut down the store. But as I said before, that's no longer happening, so I guess I don't really need these 2 applications anymore. MotorStorm RC. This is a PlayStation Network exclusive spin-off of MotorStorm, except with RC cars, obviously. It's actually a pretty fun spin-off game. The controls aren't the best. It does take a little getting used to, but overall, it's not a bad game. I recommend it. Race the Sun. This is actually a really fun indie game. It's exactly what it sounds like. You're basically piloting a solar-powered ship trying to race the sun. It is one of those trial and error games which may not be for everybody, but I still really enjoy it. Highly recommend it. Oh my god, Quiplash. I could talk all day about how good Quiplash is. One of my favorite party games of all time, right next to Mario Party. It is absurd. It is so much fun. Highly recommend it. Doesn't matter what platform you get it on, you're going to have an absolute blast with this game. Wipeout HD, one of the best racing games on PS3 in my opinion. This game looks and runs absolutely beautiful at a full 1080p and 60 FPS. Great track design, fantastic soundtrack, and plenty of ships to pilot. This is a fantastic racing game. And it's even better with the HD Fury DLC, which adds more ships, more tracks, and more game modes. If you don't play it on PS3, pick up the Wipeout Omega Collection on PS4. Wipeout is so much fun. Dogfight 1942. This is only a trial version, and I haven't played it yet, so I can't say anything about it, unfortunately. Beat Hazard Ultra. Again, this is a trial version, and I haven't played it yet. I can't say anything about it. Hypervoid. I don't play very many shoot-'em-ups, but this is actually a pretty fun one. It can get a little difficult at times, which is one reason why I don't play it very often. I get quite frustrated with it, but it's still a really good game. I do recommend it, and it's also on PS4. Batman the Telltale series. Again, this is a trial version. I haven't played it yet, and I can't say anything about it. Sorry. Infamous Festival of Blood. This is a really good standalone expansion to Infamous 2. I do like the premise, and the vampire abilities are pretty cool, but it is a little on the short side. But for what it is, it's still a really good expansion. And plus, you don't actually have to own Infamous 2 to play this game, which is definitely a plus. Hyperboloid HD. It's a pretty good brick-breaking game. It doesn't do anything overly special, but for what it is, it's pretty good. And it does support custom soundtracks, so you can use your own music from your PS3's hard drive in the game, which is pretty cool. Quantum Conundrum. This is a really fun puzzle game. It reminds me a lot of Portal in some ways, except, instead of portals, you're playing with gravity and physics. The puzzles can be a little too easy at times, but it's got good humor, it looks and plays pretty good on PS3, and the gameplay is really fun. And that's really all that matters at the end of the day. Flower is hard to describe sometimes. It's more of an interactive visual experience than a game. You essentially control the wind using the 6-axis motion controls in the DualShock 3, and it does work well enough. If you're looking for something relaxing that's more visual experience than game, Flower's the way to go. And they did port it to PS4 if you want to play it on there. DuckTales Remastered. This is actually a pretty good remaster of the original DuckTales game on the NES. I unfortunately did not grow up in the 80s, so I didn't get to watch the DuckTales TV show when it first aired, and I think I've only ever played DuckTales on the NES once. Despite that though, I still really enjoyed my time with DuckTales Remastered. Whether you grew up with DuckTales in the 80s, or if you're like me just looking for a good game, I do recommend DuckTales Remastered. Pac-Man Championship Edition. Now this is how you do a modern take on an old arcade game. Pac-Man Championship Edition is probably one of my favorite Pac-Man games, right next to the original game. If you've never played Pac-Man Championship Edition, you owe it to yourself to play it. It is awesome. It is amazing. Alien Shooter. It's an alright twin-stick shooter. I remember vaguely playing this when I was like 7 years old, and I remember it gave me nightmares. But experiencing it now as an adult, it's kind of generic and it can get a little repetitive at times. It doesn't run the best on PS3, but I do recommend experiencing it at least once. There's some fun to be had. Rayman Origins. This is a really, really fun Rayman game. One of the best in the series in my opinion. The game looks absolutely beautiful at a solid 1080p and 60 FPS, and it is so much fun to play with friends. It can get a little difficult at times, especially if you're playing in single player, but it's still a fantastic platformer. Ubisoft, what are you doing? Make another Rayman game. Come on now. Rayman Origins and Rayman Legends are such good games. Give us another one, damn it. We want more. And finally, for PS3 content, we have Journey. Just like Flower, Journey is more of an interactive visual experience than a game. I believe Journey was made by the same developers who made Flower, and is also on PS4 as well. Journey is an amazing experience. You owe it to yourself to play it at least once. Moving on to PSP content, we have Snowy the Bear's Adventure. I used to play this game on PC all the time when I was little, and it's actually a pretty good version on PS3 and PSP. It's not super difficult or really that in-depth, but it's still a really fun game. I do recommend it. Our last stop is PS1 games. First, we have Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver. I haven't played a whole lot of this game, but I've heard some pretty good things about it. If you're a fan of the Legacy of Kain games, this is a pretty good one. Or so I'm told. Finally, to round out my digital games, we have Disney Pixar's Toy Story 2 Buzz Lightyear to the Rescue. This is actually a really fun and really good movie tie-in game. I originally played the game on PC growing up, but the PS1 version is still a really good version. If you're looking for a good movie tie-in game, Toy Story 2 is not a bad choice. The buttons on the DualShock 3 feel really nice and responsive, which, is always a good thing. I'm not entirely sure if they're still pressure sensitive like they were on the PS2 controller. I'm sure they probably are, I'm just not really aware of it. Like I mentioned earlier in the video, the DualShock 3 has built-in motion controls with the 6-axis feature. Not a whole lot of games supported it. Most of the Sony titles used it to a certain extent. Like Little Big Planet here, for example. If I tilt the controller, it makes my character, look around. Other games that I can think of, like in Uncharted, if you're walking across a log, you use the controller to balance yourself so you don't fall off the log. I believe Resident Evil 5 and 6 also use this 6-axis controller to basically, if a zombie grabs a hold of you, you shake the controller violently to get them off of you. There were even some games like Flower and Lair that exclusively used the 6-axis feature to control the game. Are the motion controls very accurate? I'd say kind of. They're not terrible, but they're not the most accurate thing in the world. I've noticed, at least with the games that I've played, it's not very precise with your movement, but, it's not terrible. They drastically improved the motion controls for the DualShock 4 and even the DualSense controller. Let's talk about the L2 and R2 triggers on the PS3 controller. And like I said before, they're not the best triggers in the world. They do feel a little mushy and a little too stiff for my liking. They tend to hurt my fingers after a while. You can't say that Sony didn't try, but these triggers leave a lot to be desired. At least they improved them a lot on PS4 and PS5. This is going to sound completely biased here, but in my opinion, right next to Nintendo D-pads, PlayStation comes a close second for the best D-pads on any controller. The D-pad on the PS3 controller is miles better than the Xbox 360's D-pad. That thing is just not great. It makes playing 2D games like Sonic the Hedgehog 2 way more enjoyable. The analog sticks are really nice and responsive. Barely any dead zone. As you can see, if I just barely press on the analog stick, and even on the right one too. Barely any dead zone. It's so nice. Honestly, despite its age, most games on the PS3 have held up surprisingly well, especially the games that came out pretty late in its lifespan, like Battlefield 4 here. I'm sure that has something to do with the PS3's hardware was very capable when it first came out. That and, well, obviously all of its games are in high definition, so they still clean up really well on a modern TV. Oh god. Maybe it was a bad idea to bring a gun to a tank fight. Finally, let's talk about backwards compatibility. And like I mentioned before, the PS3 Slim unfortunately is not backwards compatible with PS2 games, but it still has full PS1 backwards compatibility, both for digital and disc-based games, which is really nice. And the nice thing about PS3 is it'll actually upscale PS1 and PS2 games up to full HD, which is really nice, especially for those PS1 games, because most of those have not aged very well graphically. If you press the PlayStation button, it'll actually give you additional options where you can either set digital or analog mode for controlling the game, as well as screen settings. So you can either play the game in its normal 4:3 aspect ratio, or you can actually force a 16:9 aspect ratio, which is really nice. You can also turn on smoothing, which will help iron out some rough edges around graphics, which is a nice feature. And you can even read the original game manual, which is a really nice touch. And so, that was the PlayStation 3. It may have had a pretty rough start in the beginning, but it is a miracle that Sony was able to turn things around. If you're thinking about picking up a PS3, now's the time, because the consoles are dirt cheap and literally everywhere, and games for it are still fairly cheap nowadays. PS4 and even PS5, as of recording this video, are not backwards compatible with PS3 games. And I am aware that PlayStation Now does have PS3 games on there, but they only have a selection of titles, and I've heard the service is kind of hit and miss sometimes in terms of game latency, so it's just not the same. So if you want to play PS3 games, this is the only way to do it. So to wrap things up, the PS3 is still a fantastic console in 2021. It has great exclusives, it is a fantastic multimedia system, and most of its games still look and play great today. Plus, I think it's got a pretty sizable hacking and homebrew community, if you're into that. I do recommend picking up the PS3 Slim model if you're looking to get one, because this one is by far the best looking version, and it is way more reliable than the fat models. And even though it's still backwards compatible with PS1 games, it's not compatible with PS2 games, unfortunately. So if you're looking for that sort of thing, you're going to have to hunt down a fat model and possibly repair it, because those ones are starting to break down nowadays. So, thank you for watching, and I'll see you all next time.